onboard crew risk. Systems such as the MQ-9, MQ-20, and MQ-1 typically require less maintenance than manned combat jets. Nevertheless, these platforms demand regular human inspection to ensure operational reliability and prevent in-flight failures. Before every mission, drones undergo comprehensive pre-flight inspections, covering the airframe, control surfaces, payload modules, sensors, and communication links. The MQ-9 Reaper also follows a manufacturer-specified maintenance schedule, including periodic inspections, component replacements, and system verifications, with some elements requiring routine checks or replacement. Ground control stations, GCS for the MQ-9 Reaper, feature an array of monitors and control interfaces. When operating manually, the drone requires 2 trained personnel, a pilot and a sensor operator. The sensor operator manages cameras, executes checklists, and supports both the pilot and external teams. While the pilot focuses on flight direction, altitude, and positioning. Each GCS console provides joysticks, keyboards, and switches to manage flight control, sensor operation, and payload functions, enabling operators to control takeoffs, landings, navigation, and mission execution while interfacing with onboard systems. Situational awareness is a primary challenge for UAV operators, necessitating extensive simulator training to prepare them for varied scenarios without physically being on board the aircraft.
Ad Astra.
Across the globe, drones are increasingly deployed for tasks that might otherwise be difficult, costly, or time-intensive. Their relatively low cost compared with manned aircraft allows even smaller militaries to enhance surveillance and defensive capabilities. Modern air power is no longer defined by a single aircraft type or mission profile. From the speed and payload of the B-1 Lancer to the enduring adaptability of the B-52 and the growing prominence of unmanned platforms, aviation now functions as a layered, interconnected system. Manned bombers, remotely piloted aircraft, and next-generation drones operate collaboratively, with each complementing the others. This integration of legacy aircraft and advanced technology illustrates a future where precision, persistence, and flexibility are paramount. As innovation accelerates, these platforms enable air forces to project power, gather intelligence, and respond to emerging challenges worldwide. That's the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to subscribe to this channel so you don't miss any of our new content. See you next time. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Fluctus channel. The F-18 Super Hornet is one of the most versatile and reliable strike fighters in the United States Navy. Introduced as an advanced evolution of the classic Hornet, it delivers greater range, improved survivability, and increased payload capacity for modern missions. Powered by two General Electric F414 engines, the aircraft provides strong thrust for carrier launches and demanding combat maneuvers. Its advanced radar, precision-guided weapons, and multi-role design allow pilots to handle air defense, strike, and close support missions. The Super Hornet remains a cornerstone of carrier air wings worldwide. On an aircraft carrier, the movement and parking of F-18 fighters is a precise and carefully choreographed process. Deck crews use hand signals and color jerseys to guide each jet across the crowded flight deck, ensuring safe spacing while launches and recoveries continue nearby. Powerful tow tractors position the aircraft into tight parking spots, often only inches from the deck edge or other jets. Shocks, chains, and tie-down points secure each F-18 against wind, sea motion, and jet blast. This coordination keeps the carrier ready for continuous flight operations. Before an F-18 launches from an aircraft carrier, crews conduct a detailed inspection of the jet. Checking landing gear, control surfaces, and fuel levels. The aircraft is then positioned on the catapult, while final checks confirm engine power and proper alignment. During recovery, the pilot approaches the deck at a controlled angle, guided by the landing signal officer and the optical landing system. The tailhook is lowered to catch one of the arresting wires, bringing the jet to a rapid stop. These steps ensure safe and continuous carrier operations. The flight deck of an aircraft carrier is one of the most dangerous workspaces in the world. High winds, shifting sea conditions, and constant aircraft movement create a fast-paced environment where every second matters. Jet blast, rotor wash, and intake suction pose serious hazards to nearby crew members. Heavy equipment, moving tow tractors, and tightly packed aircraft increase the risk of collisions. Loud noise and limited visibility demand absolute focus from everyone on deck. Through strict procedures, constant communication, and disciplined teamwork, sailors maintain safety while supporting non-stop flight operations. In July 2015, Navy divers and explosive ordnance disposal technicians from Commander Task Group 56.1 carried out a demanding recovery mission in the United States Fifth Fleet area of operations. Their objective was to locate and salvage an F-18 Super Hornet that had come to rest on the seafloor after an unexpected mishap. Working in deep water with limited visibility, the team used advanced sonar systems, remotely operated vehicles, and precise navigation to pinpoint the aircraft's position. Once located, divers descended to secure lifting points and assess the structural condition of the jet. Explosive ordnance disposal technicians ensured the aircraft was safe to handle by inspecting remaining fuel, batteries, and any unspent ordnance that could pose a hazard during recovery. The team then rigged specialized lifting equipment that allowed a crane on a nearby vessel to raise the aircraft slowly and safely to the surface. This operation demonstrated the skill, readiness, and teamwork of Navy diving and EOD units. Their expertise ensured the aircraft was recovered intact, protected sensitive equipment, and supported ongoing fleet operations throughout the region. The mission remains a strong example of the precision and discipline required for underwater recovery. The average Nimitz-class aircraft carrier in the U.S. Navy carries up to 6,000 crew, commanders, and airmen on board. Acting is essentially a floating airbase. The center of activity on any carrier is the flight deck. And on the flight deck, every crew member must remain fully aware of their duties at all times. U.S. carriers employ a color-coded system to prevent accidents and streamline operations. Specifically, flight deck crews wear differently colored jackets and helmets to quickly indicate their particular roles and responsibilities during flight operations. For example, green is worn by catapult and arresting gear crews, air wing maintenance personnel, cargo handling personnel, ground support equipment troubleshooters, and hook runners. This group primarily focuses on maintenance, launch, and recovery operations, meaning that they manage the takeoff and landing of various aircraft. Known as grapes due to their color, purple jackets are designated for aviation fuel handlers. These men and women are responsible for fueling and defueling aircraft. While this may seem straightforward, these are actually critical operations requiring strict adherence to safety procedures. Indeed, handling large quantities of aviation fuel in an environment with multiple potential ignition sources carries inherent risks. Thus, grapes are easily identifiable not only by their color, but also by protective gear such as gloves and goggles, which guard against fuel splashes and vapors.
Sequência feliz para aja, program siap feliz di mana aja.
Flight deck crew members in red jackets are generally ordnance personnel, though crash and salvage teams and explosive ordnance disposal also wear crimson.
Take it easy.
These men and women primarily handle, transport, and load different types of ordnance, including missiles, bombs, and ammunition, onto aircraft. This process begins below deck, where all ordnance undergoes thorough inspections and safety checks to ensure it is in proper working condition and safe to handle. Once complete, red jackets manage transportation of the ordnance to the flight deck, loading, and arming. In the event of an incident, ordnance personnel are trained to respond rapidly to control and mitigate the situation, even disposing of ordnance if necessary. Several other jacket colors are used on aircraft carrier flight decks. Yellow jackets are worn by aircraft handling officers, arresting gear officers, and plane directors. These personnel primarily direct aircraft on the flight deck, including taxiing, takeoff, and landing operations. Blue jackets are worn by plane handlers and aircraft elevator operators. This group handles and moves aircraft on both flight and hangar decks. Landing signal officers and other senior personnel usually wear white. As highly trained aviators, LSOs provide real-time feedback to incoming pilots, often assisting them in adjusting their approach to ensure safe landings. The average aircraft carrier flight deck is outfitted with billions of dollars of equipment, all vital for supporting the men, women, and aircraft on board in performing their duties. The most crucial of this equipment is likely the catabar system. Catabar stands for Catapult Assisted Takeoff, but Arrested Recovery. As the name suggests, the system features a steam or hydraulic catapult that launches each aircraft to takeoff speed within seconds, enabling the use of the carrier's comparatively short runways. The rear of the system has arrestor wires that catch each plane and absorb its kinetic energy, bringing it to a safe stop. On some newer ships, K2 is being replaced
Good
with
roll.
cables.
All right, maybe I'll take
Electromagnetic
one more day
aircraft
off
launch
and
system.
knock out the rest of the work once I'm feeling up to it.
This modern catapult uses electromagnetic technology to launch aircraft, providing smoother acceleration, reduced stress on aircraft, and increased control and precision. Most carriers feature multiple runways and several catapults. This setup maximizes operational efficiency, flexibility, and safety by allowing
Navigating
simultaneous
the world's
launch
a
and
whole lot
recovery
easier with a few
operations.
different identities to choose from. Need me to come up with some for you?
While one aircraft is launched via a catapult on one runway, another can be landing and caught by arresting gear on a different runway. Multiple arresting wires also provide redundancy. Because the wires are designed to engage the arresting hook of incoming aircraft, having separate wires increases the likelihood of a successful catch on the first attempt. While the flight deck is critical to a carrier's daily operations, two other areas exert significant control over activity on board. The first is the island, a tower housing the bridge, carrier air traffic control center, and primary flight control. Beyond being the operational hub for the ship's commanding officer and navigation team, the island is the nerve center for both navigation and flight operations. The second vital area is the bow, a glass enclosed section of the flight deck that contains the integrated catapult control station. From this vantage point, the catapult officer supervises all flight deck operations. Operating the catapult requires close coordination with the air boss, who performs the final checks on aircraft and deck conditions before launch. The U.S. Navy has entered the 21st century with aircraft carrier flight deck simulators such as this. Known as the Flight Deck Crew Refresher Training Expansion Pack, or TEP, it employs virtual reality to immerse trainees in a realistic flight deck environment, allowing them to practice and respond to various scenarios, including emergencies, equipment failures, and complex aircraft recovery operations. Since LSOs play a critical role in carrier flight safety, TEP enhances trainee decision-making, communication skills, and situational awareness through focused training projects. Those who have served aboard a carrier are likely familiar with other essential duties crew members may perform. One of these is the FOD walk. FOD stands for Foreign Object Debris, referring to any loose item that could damage aircraft or injure personnel if blown by a propeller or drawn into an engine intake. A FOD walk is usually conducted by crew lining up shoulder to shoulder across the deck, meticulously checking for foreign objects such as rocks, tools, and bolts. This activity is typically done at the start of the day and before flight operations, though frequency depends on operational tempo and deck conditions. critical safety and maintenance duty is the flight deck scrub. Scrubbing removes small debris invisible to the naked eye, but still potentially hazardous to aircraft or personnel. It also ensures aircraft, vehicles, and crew maintain proper traction while moving on the deck. Over time, the deck can become slippery from spilled fluids, wear, and environmental factors such as sea spray and rain. Scrubbing removes these hazards, maintaining grip for aircraft and crew. Additionally, regular scrubbing eliminates salt deposits and other corrosive substances, prolonging the deck's structural integrity and reducing the need for costly repairs or replacements. In the end, every scene on a carrier flight deck, from the power of the F-18 Super Hornet to the discipline of the sailors who guide it, reveals the extraordinary teamwork behind naval aviation. These operations demand constant focus, technical mastery, and precise coordination from hundreds of skilled men and women. Whether launching jets, recovering them, maintaining equipment, or training for the next challenge, the crew keeps the carrier ready to project air power anywhere in the world. That's the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to subscribe to this channel so you don't miss any of our new content. See you next time.
The steel cable snaps. It slices through the air at over 300 miles per hour. In less than a second, you can cut a human body in half. This isn't a scene from a horror movie. This happens on the deck of American aircraft carriers. And the men who face this nightmare every single day wear green shirts. Most people have never heard of them. They're called boat runners. And according to Lloyd's of London, they have one of the most dangerous jobs on planet Earth. What they do in those few seconds after a fighter jet lands will mean the difference between life and death, not just for themselves, but for everyone on that deck. You've probably seen footage of aircraft carriers, jets screaming off catapults, planes slamming onto the deck at 150 miles per hour. It looks like controlled chaos. And in the middle of that chaos, you see sailors wearing different colored shirts. Yellow, red, purple, blue.
Thank you for completing today's commissions. Here is your reward.
But there's one color that stands out, green. And within that group of green shirts, there's a job so dangerous, so terrifying, that even other flight deck crew members won't do it. These are the hook runners. And today, you're going to learn exactly what makes their job the deadliest position on an aircraft carrier flight. Let's start with the basics. An aircraft carrier flight deck isn't just dangerous. It's one of the most hostile work environments ever created by human beings. The noise alone can permanently damage your hearing in minutes. Jet engines scream at 140 decibels. That's louder than a chainsaw held directly against your ear. The heat from jet exhaust can reach 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Hot enough to melt metal. Hot enough to cook a person alive in seconds. The deck itself is only about 1,000 feet long. That's just 3 football fields. And on that tiny space, you've got 90,000 pounds of fighter jets landing and taking off every few minutes. The ship is moving. The ocean is moving. The wind is constantly shifting. And in the middle of all that, you've got about 200 people working, all of them inches away from death at any given moment. But here's what most people don't understand. Every single person on that deck depends on something working perfectly. Something that has to be reset manually after every single landing. The arresting gear cables. And that's where hook runners come in. When a fighter jet lands on an aircraft carrier, it's not like landing on a regular runway. The pilot slams that aircraft down at 150 miles per hour. The instant the wheels hit the deck, a hook hanging from the tail of the plane catches one of 4 steel cables stretched across the landing area. These cables are called cross-deck pendants. Each one is over 2 inches thick, made of braided steel wire, strong enough to stop a 50,000-pound jet traveling at maximum speed. When that tail hook catches the cable stretches. It pulls out from both sides of the deck, running through a massive hydraulic system below. That system absorbs all that energy and brings the jet to a complete stop in just 2 seconds.
Looks
The
like the
jet goes
situation
from
has changed
150
again.
miles per hour to 0 in 300 feet. That's the equivalent of hitting a brick wall, except the plane and the pilot survive. If you have respect for the men and women who do this job every single day, type respect in the comments below. Let's show them some appreciation. Now here's the problem. After that cable stops the jet, it's stretched out across the deck. It's lying there in 2 long loops on either side, and there's another jet coming in to land in about 30 seconds. That cable needs to be back in position, ready to catch the next plane. The only way to get it back in position is for someone to run out there and manually reset it. That someone is the hook runner. Picture this scene. A 40-ton fighter jet just slammed onto the deck 5 seconds ago. The engines are still screaming. The jet is rolling forward as the pilot taxis out of the landing area. Jet fuel is in the air. The deck is slick with oil and seawater. The ship is rolling with the waves. And you're about to run directly into the space where the next jet is going to land. You're carrying a tool. It's basically a 5-foot steel bar with a hook on the end. Your job is to grab that 2-inch steel cable and guide it back through a series of pulleys and guides so it's ready for the next aircraft. You have maybe 20 seconds, maybe less, because that next jet is already on final approach. You can see it coming, and if you're still on that deck when it lands, you're dead. But that's not even the worst part. The worst part is what happens if that cable snaps. Since 1980, at least 42 flight deck crew members have been killed or seriously injured. And many of those incidents involved arresting gear cables. When these cables snap, they don't just fall to the deck, they whip across at speeds over 300 miles per hour. They cut through everything in their path. Steel, equipment, human bodies. There's no warning, no time to react. 1 second you're doing your job. The next second that cable is coming at you faster than you can blink. In 1981, an EA-6B Prowler crashed on the USS Nimitz during landing. 14 sailors and Marines died. 45 more were injured. Some of those injuries came from arresting cables that snapped during the crash. In 2017, the chief petty officer on the USS Ronald Reagan was run over by an FA-18 Super Hornet. He lost his leg. In 2018, Airman Apprentice was killed on the USS Fish. He was struck by the propellers of the E-2C Hawkeye.
How about some rest?
How the human body reacts under pressure. We'll get to that in just a moment. We need to understand who these hook runners actually are. Hook runners are part of the air department. Specifically, they're aviation boatswain's mates. These sailors maintain and operate all the equipment used to launch and recover aircraft. That includes the catapults that launch jets off the front of the ship, the arresting gear that catches them when they land, and all the support equipment in between. Most of them are young, early 20s. Some of them just got out of boot camp a few months ago, but they're trained to a level most people can't imagine. Before they're allowed to work on the flight deck, They go through weeks of intensive training. They learn every procedure, every emergency. Because on that deck, there's no time to go. Flight deck sits about 60 feet above the water. Even if you survive the fall, you're now in the middle of the ocean. The ship is moving at 30 miles per hour. By the time anyone realizes you're gone, you could be half a mile behind the carrier. In rough seas, your chances of being found are almost zero. That's why every person on the flight deck wears a float coat and a cranial helmet. The float coat is bright colored so you can be seen in the water. It's also got flotation built in. The cranial protects your head and has communication equipment inside. But even with all that gear, falling overboard is usually a death sentence. Before we go any further,
Close your eyes. Let's talk about what happens during actual flight operations. The Navy calls it cyclic operations. That means launching and recovering aircraft cycles. Each cycle lasts about 90 minutes. During that time, they'll launch 15 to 20 aircraft. Then they'll recover the previous group that's been flying. Then they'll launch another group. This goes on 24 hours a day when the carrier is operational. During recovery operations, planes land about 1 per minute, sometimes faster. Each landing is called a trap. That's because the tailhook traps the arresting cable. After each trap, the hook runners have to reset the cable before the next plane lands. That means they're running out onto that deck 15 to 20 times per cycle, maybe 200 times in a 24-hour period. Every single time, they're playing their lives with nothing but too dark. Playing like this all the multiplication. When that happens, the pilot immediately goes full throttle and takes off. Comes back around and tries again. The runners still have to reset the cable, even though there's a plane coming in for another attempt right away. Sometimes the cable doesn't release from the tailhook properly. Now you've got a jet sitting on the landing area with the cable still attached. The hook runners have to work around that jet, with the engines running, with the next plane already approaching. The pressure is unbelievable. Or sometimes the hydraulic system malfunctions. The cable doesn't retract smoothly, it might get stuck, or it might retract too fast. The hook runners have to manually fix the problem, while jets are landing, while the deck crew is moving aircraft around, while the ship is rolling into the seas. Another factor that makes this job so deadly is fatigue. Close your eyes.
Tired people make mistakes, and on a carrier flight deck, one mistake can kill you. Kill someone else. The hook runners know this. They live with it every day. The stress is overwhelming, but they do it anyway, because that's the job. Because their brothers and sisters on that deck are counting on them. Because the mission depends on it. In recent years, the Navy has been trying to improve safety on carrier flight decks. They've upgraded equipment, improved training programs, added more safety observers. Specifically authorized because of the inherent dangers of that movement. State that flight deck crew work under and in extremely close proximity to moving aircraft and are exposed to hazards of blast, high-speed propellers and rotors, possible arresting cable separations, and the obvious hazards associated with aircraft crashes and fires. That's the official language, but it doesn't capture the reality. It doesn't describe what it feels like to run onto that deck, knowing a cable could snap at any second. It doesn't explain the split-second decisions, the constant fear, the weight of responsibility, because if a hook runner makes a mistake, if they don't get that cable reset in time, the next jet coming in won't have anything to catch it. That jet will go off the end of the carrier into the ocean, and the pilot will probably die. That's what these sailors carry with them every single day. That's the burden of being a hook runner. Now here's something most people don't know. Hook runners aren't the only ones on the flight deck doing dangerous jobs. The entire operation depends on hundreds of sailors working together, and each colored shirt represents a different role. Each role has its own dangers. The purple shirts, called drapes, handle all the aviation fuel. They're pumping thousands of gallons of highly flammable jet fuel into aircraft that are loaded with weapons and surrounded by hot engines. One spark could cause a catastrophic explosion. The red shirts are ordnance men. They load missiles, bombs, and ammunition onto the aircraft. They're handling live explosives in one of the most dangerous environments imaginable. They're also part of the crash and salvage crew. If there's a fire or a crash, they're the ones who run toward it. The yellow shirts direct all aircraft movement on the deck. They use hand signals to guide 40-ton jets around a space barely big enough to hold them. One wrong signal, one miscommunication, and aircraft collide. People die. The blue shirts are the handlers. They chain aircraft down when they're parked. They operate the elevators and tractors. They're junior sailors, often still learning the job, but they're surrounded by the same dangers as everyone else. The brown shirts are plane captains. They're responsible for maintaining the aircraft. They do the pre-flight and post-flight inspections. They make sure every jet is safe to fly. If they miss something, a pilot could die. The white shirts are safety observers, medical personnel, and landing signal officers. The LSOs are former pilots who help guide aircraft during landing. They have to make split-second decisions about whether a landing looks safe or whether they need to wave off the aircraft and send it around for another attempt. Every single one of these jobs is dangerous. Every single person on that deck is putting their life on the line. But the hook runners face a unique combination of dangers that makes their job particularly deadly. They work directly with equipment that can fail catastrophically. They work in the landing zone where aircraft are coming in at full speed. They have no margin for error, no second chances, and they do it with pride, with professionalism, with dedication to their shipmates and their country. These are American sailors doing one of the hardest jobs in the world, and most Americans have never heard of them. The statistics tell part of the story. Since 1980, dozens of flight deck crew members have died. Hundreds more have been injured. Some lost limbs, some suffered burns, some were sucked into jet intakes or struck by propellers. Every carrier has memorial plaques honoring the sailors who gave their lives in service. But statistics don't capture everything. They don't show the close calls, the near misses, the times when something almost went wrong but didn't. Every hook runner has stories. Times when they were seconds away from disaster. Times when luck or skill or divine intervention saved their life. They don't talk about it much. It's just part of the job. Here's what one former flight deck crew member said about the experience. He described it as controlled chaos. That's the phrase everyone uses, controlled chaos. Because even though it looks insane, even though it seems